The crystal glasses clinked as Dad stood to make his birthday speech. The grand ballroom of the Wellington Hotel sparkled with old money and older prejudices, filled with board members of Chen Global Industries who'd watched me grow up and, according to my father, grow disappointing. 60 years, Dad began, his silver hair catching the chandelier light. 30 of those building this company from nothing. 20 of those hoping my daughter would follow in my footsteps. He paused, his eyes finding me in the crowd. And 10 accepting that some dreams die hard. I gripped my champagne glass tighter, the stem threatening to snap under my fingers. Next to me, my mother touched my arm gently, a gesture that had become routine during Dad's public disappointment speeches. But we're not here to dwell on failures, he continued, raising his glass. We're here to celebrate success. To proper business degrees, proper corporate ladders, and proper. James. A voice cut through the room like a blade through silk. Mrs. Wei, the longest-serving board member, had risen from her seat. I believe we have some business to attend to before your speech continues. Dad's smile faltered slightly. Sarah, surely business can wait until... It cannot. Mrs. Wei's tone left no room for argument. She nodded to her assistant, who began distributing blue folders to every guest. I received mine with trembling hands, recognizing the corporate letterhead I'd grown up seeing on Dad's desk. Inside was a single document, its contents making my heart stop. Ladies and gentlemen, Mrs. Wei announced, her small frame commanding the room's attention. For the past 18 months, we've been conducting a thorough evaluation of Chen Global's future leadership needs. Today, on James Chen's 60th birthday, we're announcing our decision. Dad's face showed confusion, then dawning comprehension. He hadn't been consulted. For the first time in 30 years, something was happening at his company without his knowledge. The board has voted unanimously, Mrs. Wei continued, turning to face me. Grace Chen will assume the position of chairman, effective immediately. The silence that followed was absolute. Even the waiters froze mid-pour. Dad's champagne glass slipped from his fingers, shattering on the marble floor. This is absurd, he managed, his voice hoarse. Grace has no business experience. She's a humanitarian architect who's built sustainable housing projects in 12 countries, Mrs. Wei interrupted. Who's developed revolutionary cost-effective building methods that have saved our development division millions. Who understands that the future of global industry isn't in maintaining old structures, but in building new ones that serve everyone. I stood slowly, my legs unsteady. The room spun with faces showing everything from shock to satisfaction. My mother was crying silently. My father looked like he'd been struck. Grace hasn't spent the last 10 years disappointing you, James, Mrs. Wei said softly. She spent them proving that there's more than one way to build a legacy. The folder in my hands contained more than just the announcement. Behind it were photographs of my projects, schools in rural communities, housing developments in disaster zones, innovative designs that combine traditional materials with modern efficiency. All funded quietly through Chen Global subsidiaries, all turning consistent profits while serving communities. Your daughter, Mrs. Wei addressed my father directly, didn't reject your business empire. She revolutionized it while you weren't looking. The next hour unfolded like a carefully orchestrated chaos. Board members swarmed around me, business cards appearing from designer pockets like magic tricks. Dad remained frozen by the podium, his birthday cake untouched behind him, its 60 candles burning lower and lower. Show them the Jakarta project, Mrs. Wei urged, guiding me toward the stage. With trembling fingers, I connected my tablet to the ballroom's projection system. The screens came alive with images of my latest development, a sustainable community built from recycled materials and local resources. But it wasn't just houses. It was an entire ecosystem designed to generate both social impact and profit. The Jakarta model, I began, my voice steadier than I felt, generates 40% more revenue than traditional development projects while reducing construction costs by 60%. Years of presenting to humanitarian organizations had taught me to lead with numbers when speaking to business people. Impossible, Dad finally spoke, stepping forward. Those margins can't. Let her finish, James, Mrs. Wei interrupted. For once in your life, listen to your daughter. The screens shifted to show detailed financial projections. By integrating local materials and labor, We've created a self-sustaining economic model. The communities don't just receive housing, they become part of the construction and maintenance ecosystem. This reduces long-term costs while creating permanent jobs. Mr. Patterson, our chief financial officer, leaned forward. These returns, they're remarkable. Why weren't we informed of this project's scope? Because, I took a deep breath. It was submitted under my maternal grandmother's name, Lou. Dad always said Chen projects had to follow traditional development models, so you built an entirely new model behind my back? Dad's voice cracked with anger, or perhaps something else. No, Dad. I built it right in front of you. You just couldn't see it because it didn't fit your vision of success. The screens filled with more projects. Solar-powered schools in Ethiopia that doubled as community centers after hours, generating rental income. Flood-resistant housing in Bangladesh that included microfinance opportunities for residents. Each project combining humanitarian goals with solid business principles. For 10 years, I continued, my confidence growing, you've called me a disappointment because I chose architecture over business school. But what you never understood was that I didn't choose between helping people and making money. I figured out how to do both. Mrs. Wei stepped forward, addressing the room. Chen Global's future isn't in competing with traditional development corporations. It's in redefining what development means. Grace hasn't been failing the company's legacy, she's been building its future. My mother had made her way to Dad's side, her hand on his arm. I could see the tension in his jaw, the struggle between his pride and his prejudices playing out across his face. The board's decision wasn't made lightly, Mrs. Wei continued. We've spent 18 months analyzing Grace's projects, studying her methodologies and projecting future applications. The unanimous vote reflects not just our confidence in her vision, but our recognition that the industry itself is changing. And my role? Dad's question cut through the murmurs. Am I to be quietly retired? That, I said, meeting his eyes, depends on you. These projects succeed because they combine innovation with experience. New ideas with proven wisdom. I took a deep breath. I don't want to erase your legacy, Dad. I want to build on it. The silence that followed felt eternal. Around us, birthday celebrations had given way to impromptu business meetings as board members pored over my project data. The cake's candles had burned out, wax pooling on the pristine frosting. The following morning I arrived at Chen Global's headquarters at dawn. The security guard did a double take. I hadn't been allowed in the building since rejecting my place at business school a decade ago. Now my name was already on the chairman's parking spot. Good morning, Miss Chen, he said, handing me a new security badge. Mrs. Wei left instructions. Your father, he's already upstairs. The elevator ride to the top floor felt like ascending through years of memories. Every floor represented a different argument, a different disappointment, a different moment when I'd failed to be the daughter he wanted. Level 20, where he'd first brought me to take your daughter to work day, proudly introducing me as his successor. Level 30, where I'd announced I wanted to study architecture instead of business. Level 40, where he'd made his final attempt to talk sense into me. Level 50, the chairman's floor. His floor. Now mine. I found him in the chairman's office. His office, standing by the floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the city. He'd aged overnight, his shoulders carrying the weight of change he hadn't chosen. Your projects, he said without turning around. How many are there? 27 completed. 43 in development. 15 in preliminary stages. I moved to stand beside him. All profitable. All sustainable. All making a difference. And all hidden from me. Not hidden, Dad. Just not announced. Every project went through proper channels, proper subsidiaries. You could have seen them anytime. You just never looked because they didn't fit your template. He turned then, his eyes red-rimmed from what I suspected was a sleepless night. Show me. Show me everything. For the next 3 hours I laid out my vision. Projects spread across 5 continents. Innovation that combined social impact with business acumen. Traditional development principles evolved into something new, something better. This housing complex in Mexico, he interrupted, pointing to one file. The return on investment is remarkable. How? Because we didn't just build houses, I explained, pulling up detailed schematics. We built a community that generates its own income. The ground floor spaces are commercial, rented to local businesses. The rooftop gardens provide produce for restaurants. Solar panels create excess energy we sell back to the grid. Every aspect is designed to create multiple revenue streams while serving the community's needs. And this is what you learned instead of getting an MBA? This is what I learned by combining architectural innovation with the business principles you taught me growing up. I met his gaze. You were a better teacher than you realized, Dad. I just applied your lessons differently. He sank into his chair. My chair now, running his hands over his face. 27 completed projects. All this time while I was telling everyone what a disappointment you were. You were my biggest investor, I said quietly. Every project went through Chen Global subsidiaries. You approved them all through proper channels based on their merits. You just never knew they were mine. The silence that followed was heavy with realization. Outside the window, the city was fully awake now, sunlight glinting off buildings I'd studied since childhood. Buildings that represented power, success, progress, but only one kind of progress. The board meeting starts in an hour, I said finally. They're expecting a transition plan. A way to merge the old Chen Global with the new vision. And what role do you see for a stubborn old man who spent 10 years being wrong about his daughter? Chief of Traditional Development, I replied. Overseeing the integration of conventional wisdom with innovative approaches. Because I meant what I said last night, Dad. I don't want to erase your legacy. I want to transform it. He stood slowly, straightening his tie, a gesture so familiar it made my heart ache. You know what the hardest part is? He said softly. Not that you proved me wrong, but that you proved me right in a way I was too blind to see. The board meeting that morning was unlike any in Chen Global's history. Instead of the usual mahogany-lined conference room, I had it moved to our largest project planning space. The walls were soon covered with blueprints, financial projections and community impact studies. This, I announced to the assembled board members, is the new face of Chen Global. Not just buildings but ecosystems. Not just profits but purpose. Dad sat quietly at first, watching as I presented project after project. But when Mr. Patterson questioned the scalability of the Mexico model, something shifted in his demeanor. If I may, he stood, straightening his cuffs, his towel for entering battle mode. Grace's approach actually solves our biggest scaling challenge. He pulled up our traditional development costs. We've been losing bids to younger, more innovative companies because our model is outdated. But look at the Jakarta numbers again. For the next hour, I watched in amazement as my father, the man who'd called me a disappointment just yesterday, defended my vision with the same ferocity he'd once used to condemn it. The Chen method, he declared, making my heart skip a beat at his use of my name, isn't just about building structures. It's about building sustainable economies within those structures. Something I should have seen years ago. Mrs. Wei smiled knowingly. That's precisely why we've spent 18 months preparing for this transition. Grace's projects haven't just proven profitable. They've shown us the future of global development. During the lunch break, I found myself in the employee cafeteria, a space I'd never been allowed to enter as a child. Dad's rules about maintaining hierarchy had been strict. Now, watching junior architects and veteran executives sharing tables, discussing projects, I saw another opportunity for change. Your father never ate here, a voice said behind me. I turned to find Maria Chen, my mother, holding 2 coffee cups. He said leaders needed to maintain distance. How did you know about my projects, Mom? I asked, accepting the coffee. All these years. She smiled, the same smile I'd seen every time Dad had criticized my choices. Who do you think suggested using your grandmother's name for the submissions? I knew your father would never look closely at anything that didn't fit his vision. But I also knew that someday the results would speak louder than his prejudices. Mrs. Wei knew too? Sarah Wei has been waiting 30 years for Chen Global to become something more than just another development corporation. Mom touched my arm. Your father built this company on the belief that success only looks one way. You're proving it can look many ways. The afternoon session focused on restructuring. Dad surprisingly took the lead. I propose 3 immediate changes, he announced. First, our development teams will be integrated, traditional and innovative approaches working together. Second, we'll establish a community impact division, measuring success not just in profits but in sustainable growth. And third, he paused looking at me. We'll create a mentorship program for young architects and business students, teaching them both sides of development. The board's approval was unanimous. As members filed out discussing implementation details, Dad remained behind. The mentorship program, I said, gathering my papers. That's not just about business, is it? 10 years, he replied softly. 10 years of calling you a disappointment because you wouldn't follow my path, never realizing you were carving a better one. He straightened a blueprint on the wall, one of my earliest designs. How many other brilliant minds have we lost because they didn't fit our narrow definition of success? It's not too late to change that. No, he agreed, it's not. But I need your help. These past 24 hours, they've shown me how much I don't know, how much I need to unlearn. The sun was setting outside, casting long shadows across the project planning space. Tomorrow we would begin the actual work of transforming Chen Global. But tonight something else needed healing. Dad, I said, would you like to see my current project site? The one here in the city. He looked surprised. You're building something here? A community center. In the neighborhood where you grew up. Where grandfather had his first construction business. His eyes widened. The old district? But that area needs exactly what Chen Global should be providing, development that serves the community while generating sustainable growth. I pulled out my tablet. Want to see how we're honoring your father's legacy while building something new?